Hello everybody, and welcome back once again to Gaza Gojo YT, and today marks the beginning of the final 16 bracket matchups for my Great Hybrid War 1.1 with the reveal of the final 8. So without further ado, let's begin. Match 1, Demoroshi vs Nero 2.0. Now, we'll be going through these categories a bit briefly considering that there are so many matches to cover. So starting off, Nero 2.0 takes duration, as while both have some very devastating weapons that can make light work of my Indown 2.0, Nero 2.0's superior speed and agility allows him to land more hits far more easily. However, Demoroshi does take health, considering that his large tanky frame, covered in incredibly thick skin, and sharp ganoid scales from both the sturgeon and alligator gar all contribute to Demoroshi's ability to tank a lot of damage from Indown 2.0 without receiving a lot of damage in return. As for battle IQ, they both tie on this category considering that they're both highly adept combatants with pretty much identical contributors to brain structure, and lastly wind frequency, which is also a tie, given that Nero 2.0 might not be as well armored as Demoroshi, but still has enough armor coupled with his overpowered arsenal of weapons and superior speed and agility in order to finish off the Indown 2.0 as quickly as possible, leaving her with little to no room to land any meaningful damage. In comparison, Demoroshi is a lot tankier and can tank a lot more hits with minimal damage received. However, his lack of agility would make it to where he would have a rough time landing a blow on my Indown 2.0. However, given how strong he is, all it would take is one well-placed hit in order to send my hybrid to the afterlife. As for the face-off winner, I decided to give it to Nero 2.0, as in comparison to my hybrid Vanessa, Nero 2.0 is a lot bigger, stronger, and more well-equipped, allowing him to stand his ground a lot better against Demoroshi, all while his superior speed, agility, and stamina allows him to overwhelm his opponent and eventually take him down in a battle of attrition. Now to tally up the scores, we start off with who's the better Indown 2.0 killer. Demoroshi scores 80% in this category courtesy of his 30% score from health, 10% score from battle IQ, and 40% score from wind frequency, in comparison to Nero 2.0, who also has 10 and 40% scores from both battle IQ and wind frequency respectively, as well as 20% from the duration, leaving him with only 70%. And with that, Demoroshi establishes himself as the better Indown 2.0 killer just barely, in order to get himself the 90% score of the overall final score, with Nero 2.0 taking the remaining 10% after winning the face-off against Demoroshi, leaving the final score as Demoroshi with 90% and Nero 2.0 with 10%. So despite the overall final score, this was a very close matchup, but courtesy of his immense health, Demoroshi manages to snatch the win with the skin of his teeth and moves on to the round of 8. Match 2, Apophis vs Alan. Now, duration-wise, Apophis takes this as the faster and more agile contestant of the two, allowing him to keep up with my Indown 2.0 a lot more easily before finishing her off in a moment's notice courtesy of his powerful paws, razor-sharp claws, and jaws that are some of the deadliest amongst the final 16. And while Alan's deadly Thagomizer packs a one-shot kill potential against my hybrid, especially considering that the tail itself is very long and flexible, granting it immense reach and a wide range of motion, Alan's inability to engage in a full-on attack under his own terms makes him fall short in this category. But what he doesn't fall short in is health, considering that his large, bulky, and stable frame, armored with oxiderms that cover nearly every single angle in his body, would leave Vanessa absolutely helpless as to how she could possibly penetrate her defenses, in comparison to Apophis, who still doesn't fall that much behind, but would likely still get dug into by a struggling Vanessa, even if the damage would be rather minimal. As for battle IQ, Apophis takes this with ease, considering that his predatory nature makes him very strategic and analytical by nature in comparison to the more brute Alan that relies on force rather than intelligence to win battles. And win frequency is a tie, for the same reasons that Nero 2.0 and Demoroshi tied in this category. And lastly, in terms of who would win a battle face-off between these two, I decided to give it to Apophis, considering that he can capitalize on all the advantages that Vanessa has over Alan, that being speed and agility, and max it up using his strength, size, and equipment in order to quite easily overwhelm Alan and use those powerful jaws to crack his skull. Now on to the scores, and surprisingly enough, both are equally as good at killing Indown 2.0s, with a score of 70% for each. Apophis taking this courtesy of his 20% from duration, 10% from battle IQ, and 40% from wing frequency, and Alan courtesy of his 30% from health, and 40% from his win frequency, with Apophis snatching the battle face-offs 10% by the skin of his teeth, which when combined with the 90% score as a great Indom 2.0 killer, sets the final score as Apophis with 100% and Allen with 90%. And in this fight of two equally adequate Indom 2.0 killers, the tiebreaker that is the battle face-off spoke its word in favor of Apophis, as the ultimate blue theropod makes his way to the final 8. Match 3. Styx vs Crowbar. Starting off, Crowbar takes duration, as while the creator of Styx has done an exceptional job to make a fish function on land, he did have a minor loophole with his hybrid that has major implications in this scenario, that being mobility, as Styx's limbs are incredibly rigid and have a very poor range of motion. Not to say that Styx would be as slow as a brick, but she would definitely be struggling a lot to keep up with my hybrid. In comparison, Crowbar is a hybrid whose entire body was engineered, fine-tuned, and perfectly built for maximum mobility at its large scale, granting him a balanced mix of strength and locomotion, especially with those powerful forelimbs and hind limbs, which can act as anti-flanking weaponry to keep Vanessa from flanking Crowbar, all while having some very devastating hippo-like jaws, a disco-carried head dome, and heavily reinforced Arsinotherium-like horns, which can give Vanessa a quite nasty time when she is subjugated to Crowbar's front end, leaving her absolutely demolished within a moment's notice. However, Styx does take health, considering that her large rotund body, covered in incredibly thick whale shark-like skin, and a highly complex scale/armor microstructure grants her an incredibly tough armor that is very hard to dig through, in comparison to Crowbar, who does have some very strong spiky armor of its own, but it's not quite to the same level as Styx's. And she also surprisingly takes battle IQ, considering that her lifeless eyes do hide a very clever brain behind them, making her quite strategic and tactical during her combat in comparison to Crowbar, who is more like a bull in terms of how he fights. And as for win frequency, I gave it to Crowbar, considering that Styx's mobility is a huge liability for her, and those shark jaws can only carry her so far, meaning that if Vanessa manages to get behind those jaws, Styx is gonna struggle a lot with landing a major hit that can incapacitate Vanessa and grant her an advantage. In comparison, Crowbar is built to tackle Vanessa from all angles and finish her off very quickly without receiving nearly as much damage, and so he takes this category with relative ease. And as you could have figured, the battle face-off winner is also Crowbar, given that his superior speed and agility allows him to flank Styx, and those powerful horns are more than enough to pierce through her powerful armor. So, in terms of the overall score, we have Crowbar getting 90%, being the Indom 2.0's better killer of the two, after getting a 60%, 20% from duration and 40% win frequency, in comparison to the 40% that Styx scored after getting a 30% from health and 10% from battle IQ. And with Crowbar also getting the 10% after winning the battle face-off against Styx, this leaves the final score as Crowbar with 100% and Styx with 0%. Now, don't let the final score fool you, for this was a fairly close matchup, but as difficult as it is to see our favorite land shark go out in her first fight, it is only fair that we allow Crowbar, who won this fight fair and square, to move on to the next round. Match 4. Crimson Horn vs Nock. First off, duration, which Nock takes with relative ease, due to his superior speed and agility allowing him to keep up with Vanessa much more easily, even though both do come equipped with some serious weaponry, such as strong jaws and large horns. Health, however, goes to Crimson Horn, as in expense of his locomotive capacity, he is quite the well-rounded fortress, with a large muscular frame, armored with osteodrums that are embedded deep within his thick skin, cartilaginous plates, and echidna quills. This guy is pretty much untouchable, and while Nock is also very durable, he's not quite to the same degree as Crimson Horn in this department. Battle IQ is a tie, as both are very well adept combatants that are adapted for fighting off huge predators, all while having genetic contributors that grant them some highly developed brain structures for high problem-solving skills. And lastly, win frequency, which goes to Nock, due to his ability to finish the fight a lot more quickly, all while retaining great health altogether. And as a result, he also wins this face-off, as his superior speed and agility allows him to flank Crimson Horn with enough attack potency, especially within those horns, to effectively pierce through Crimson Horn's armor and pull off a win. Now onto the scores, and in terms of who's the better Indunk 2.0 killer, Nock scores 70% courtesy of his 20% from duration, 10% from battle IQ, and 40% from wind frequency, in comparison to the 40 that Nock has, courtesy of his 30% from health and 10% from battle IQ, giving Nock the 90% for being the better Indunk 2.0 killer, in addition to the 10% for winning the face-off against Crimson Horn, leaving the final score as Crimson Horn 0% and Nock 100%. And with that result, Nock establishes Reptilian supremacy over his mammalian adversary and moves on to the final 8. Match number 5, Maximus vs Crimson. Considering that this is quite the typical Theropod vs Sauropod confrontation, perhaps I need to go through this one a bit more quickly. Duration goes to Crimson, considering that his speed and agility, the best amongst the final 16 and even better than Vanessa's, coupled with his perfect combination of headbutts and bites, would allow him to finish off the Indunk 2.0 much more quickly than Maximus ever could. However, health does go to Maximus, given that his unimaginably colossal size and thick skin would prove quite a tough challenge for Vanessa to penetrate, in comparison to Crimson, who is still very well armored in his own right courtesy of the Jacksbill Osteoderms, but is still very prone to injury. Battle IQ goes to Crimson, considering that the common consensus of nature suggests that predators are always going to be smarter and more strategic than prey, and this situation is no different. Wind frequency, however, goes to Maximus, considering that he has a much better chance of finishing the fight as the ultimate winner in comparison to Crimson. And in the end, the face-off winner would obviously be Maximus, as his large size and stature, coupled with his immensely thick skin and dense body, would make it very difficult for Crimson to penetrate with any form of attack he can leverage. So, in terms of who's the better Indunk 2.0 killer, Maximus gets a score of 70% courtesy of 30% from health and 40% from wind frequency, in comparison to the 30% that Crimson scores courtesy of his 10% from battle IQ and 20% from duration, leaving Maximus with the 90% of being the better Indunk 2.0 killer, coupled with the 10% of winning the battle face-off against Crimson, leaving the final score as Maximus with 100% and Crimson with the 0%. So in this fight, despite the David that is Crimson giving it his all and fighting courageously, he still could not overcome the Goliath that is Maximus, who gets to move on to the final 8. Match 6, Gorgonops Ursinus vs Bastion 2.0. Duration would go for Gorgonops Ursinus, considering that his combination of strong jaws and powerful forelimbs, in addition to his surprisingly athletic frame, would allow him to quite easily finish off Vanessa in record time, even though Bastion 2.0 surprisingly doesn't trail too far behind, considering that his ability to leverage sound attacks and skunk spray in order to disorient Vanessa before finishing her off with a powerful tail clip attack would allow him to also kill her in a very fast time for a sauropod. Still, Gorgonops takes this point. Bastion 2.0 does take health though, as his much larger and more robust frame, coupled with his thick skin and spiky scales that cover his entire body from head to toe, make him pretty much untouchable by Vanessa, in comparison to Gorgonops, whose berserker fighting style makes him to where he would succumb to high amounts of injury after the fight. Sure, he might still survive, but he would still be very injured and might be crippled for life. Battle IQ is a tie, considering that Gorgonops is a highly predatory Gorgonopsid with heightened intelligence, as I mentioned previously with other predatory hybrids that are mentioned in the final 16 bracket. But Bastion does boast heightened intelligence for a sauropod, considering the salmon-crested cockatoo grants him a heightened degree of intelligence and problem-solving skills, making him not quite as dumb as other herbivorous hybrids in the final 16. And wind frequency would go to Bastion for the same reason that Maximus got this category over Crimson. And lastly, winner of the fight, which easily goes to Bastion given his much larger size, better armor, and ability to disorient an opponent using sonic attacks and skunk spray before finishing off with a powerful tail club to the head. Now on to the final score. Gorgonops Ursinus takes a 30% score in terms of how well it can kill an Indown 2.0, courtesy of his 20% for duration and 10% for battle IQ. In comparison, Bastion 2.0 has an 80% score, courtesy of his 30% from health, 10% from battle IQ, and 40% from wind frequency, granting Bastion 2.0 the 90% of being the better Indown 2.0 killer, as well as the 10% of winning the face-off against Gorgonops Ursinus, leaving the final score as Bastion 2.0 with 100% and Gorgonops Ursinus with 0%. So, yet another David falls to yet another Goliath as Bastion 2.0 moves on to the round of 8. Match 7, Ferox Rex vs Gentle Donna. And as you can see, this is quite the clean sweep, as Ferox Rex takes duration courtesy of his superior agility and more versatile weaponry, including those powerful arms which can be used for grappling and pinning down Vanessa, for those powerful jaws to chomp down on her, or a horrific jab from those Carnotaurus horns to finish her off. Health also goes to Ferox Rex courtesy of his more extensive and much stronger armor that offers much optimal protection, besides the fact that he can also finish the fight much faster, allowing him to pretty much leave no chance for Vanessa to deal any meaningful damage to him. Battle IQ also goes to Ferox Rex courtesy of his predatory intelligence, and wind frequency also goes to Ferox Rex courtesy of the fact that he can finish the fight a lot faster and in much better health. And as for the face-off winner, considering that while Ferox Rex is a bit lighter, it's not a major advantage for Gentle Donna to capitalize on, especially considering that Ferox Rex is much more well-equipped, is much more agile, smarter, and arguably on par with her in terms of physical strength. So yeah, this poor Hadrosaur is getting absolutely demolished. So honestly, I don't even feel like reading this. You can just check it out for yourself, but you know how this ends. Ferox Rex Secondus moves on to the round of 8. So now let's get to the last match. Match 8, Herbert vs Joseph. Oh look, yet another clean sweep, as Herbert seems to take duration courtesy of his more devastating arsenal of weapons as well as his superior speed and agility, not to mention taking health thanks to his more powerful set of armor as well as his larger and more robust frame. Joseph does take battle IQ, fortunately for him, courtesy of his predatory intelligence, but Herbert retaliates with winning wind frequency, given that he can finish the fight a lot faster and in better health. As for the face-off winner, yeah, you probably guessed it, it's Herbert. His superior equipment, superior speed and agility, and superior pretty much everything but intelligence would allow him to take down Joseph with relative ease. Score time, and as you can see, Herbert takes a 90% score for how good it can kill an Indown 2.0, with 20% for duration, 30% for health, and 40% for wind frequency, in comparison to the 10% that Joseph gets courtesy of his battle IQ, giving Herbert the overall 90% of being the better Indown 2.0 killer, in addition to the additional 10% for winning the face-off against Joseph, leaving Herbert with 100% as his final score, in comparison to the 0% that Joseph has. And with that, Herbert concludes the list of hybrids that move on to the final 8. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the final 8 for my Great Hybrid War 1.1. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for the final 4 of the Great Hybrid War 1.1. And also please like and subscribe. I'm literally recording this at 1 AM and my brain is about to melt, so please like for my pain. So yeah, until then, goodbye.